Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really digging into something that, honestly, it's pretty staggering when you see the numbers. We're talking about a record-breaking data breach. It's completely shaken up the cybersecurity world.
Yeah.
And this isn't, just another leak in the news cycle. We are talking about the largest digital data breach in history.
That's right.
Just to give you a sense of scale here, the previous record, which was already considered massive, was about 184 million records compromised. This new one, get this, 16 billion login credentials.
16 billion. It's almost hard to comprehend. And our mission today, really, is to unpack what exactly happened here. Who is really at risk from this huge event? And most importantly, what practical steps can you, listening right now, take to secure your digital life?
Yeah, what can we actually do?
Exactly. And we'll also look a bit broader. What does this mean for tech companies? What about the future of online security?
Okay, so let's unpack that number first. 16 billion credentials. I mean, it's almost an abstract figure. What does that actually mean on the ground? And which platforms were really hit hard?
Well, the sources we looked at mentioned that, on average, each database involved in this whole thing had something like 550 million records.
Wow, per database.
Per database. And it wasn't just, obscure sites. We're talking major players, Apple, Google, Facebook, Telegram.
The big ones.
The really big ones.
Yeah.
And the list goes on. Many more were impacted too.
So who's at risk then? Is it just people on those specific platforms, or is it wider?
Well, what's fascinating and maybe a bit scary is how broad the impact really is. With a breach this size, you could argue that virtually everyone is potentially at risk.
Everyone.
But the sources do highlight that cryptocurrency users, they're facing some specific heightened vulnerability.
Okay, why them specifically?
Think about it. Maybe you click a malicious link, something that looks legitimate, in a message, and bang, it exposes your wallet credentials.
Oh.
Or maybe a password you reused somewhere else gets compromised in this breach, and suddenly attackers have access, maybe total hijacking of your crypto accounts. The risks are very tangible. Phishing attacks trying to trick you, identity theft, even draining bank accounts linked to compromised info.
Right. So, connecting that back to the listener, what are the real-world consequences we could be looking at? It sounds serious. It goes beyond just losing access to a website, right?
Absolutely. You could be looking at actual bank fraud, unauthorized money transfers happening from your account,
Oof.
or the really unsettling experience of identity theft, someone using your private data for their own gain.
And then there's losing access to those platforms that are pretty critical these days, your email, maybe crypto wallets, as we said, social media.
It can be devastating.
Okay, so on that point about bank accounts, there was a practical tip that came up in the research, right? Something about transfer limits.
Yeah, exactly. One piece of advice, directly from the expert cited, is to think about keeping a low transfer limit on your main bank account. Just, what's really necessary for day-to-day stuff. It limits the damage if someone does get access.
That makes sense. A simple step, but potentially quite effective. But, these huge breaches, it feels like we hear about them all the time. Why does this keep happening? Is it getting worse?
Well, that's a really important question. And the experts we looked at say these kinds of leaks, they're not new. They've been tracking them for, over a decade.
A decade? Wow.
Yeah. And here's something quite revealing. This stolen data, even from these massive breaches, sometimes it's sold on the dark web for, pennies. The sources mention figures as low as $25.
$25 for potentially billions of records. That seems incredibly low.
It is. It shows how commoditized this stolen data has become. But it also points to the volume. And another big piece of the puzzle is, frankly, us, user behavior.
What do you mean, like people not taking it seriously?
Sort of. Many users, they get breach notifications, right? Emails saying your data may have been compromised. But often, people just ignore them. Or they don't act until it's actually too late, until something bad happens.
Yeah, I can see that. Alert fatigue is real.
Exactly. And what security folks call cyber hygiene, just basic digital habits, it remains pretty poor overall. People rarely update passwords. Even when they're warned, they reuse the same password across loads of different sites.
Which is a huge no-no. We know that.
It absolutely is. But it's not just laziness. Sometimes it's fatigue, like you said. So many warnings, so many accounts. And maybe, until recently, security measures felt like too much hassle, too much friction.
Right. Which kind of raises the question of, Well, whose fault is this ultimately? Who's responsible when these things happen?
That's the accountability question. We'll definitely circle back to that.
Okay, but first, with these huge risks hanging over us, what can people listening do right now? Is there anything concrete?
Yes, absolutely. And the good news is authorities like the FBI, tech giants like Google, they're not just raising alarms or giving clear advice.
Okay, let's hear it. What are the key steps?
First off, change your passwords regularly, especially for important accounts.
Okay, regular changes. Got it.
Second, and this is crucial, use strong, unique passwords for every single platform. Don't reuse them.
Unique is the key word there, isn't it?
It really is. And linked to that, here's a tip that might sound a bit old school.
Oh.
Consider writing down those really critical, unique passwords offline in a physical notebook.
A paper notebook?
Yeah.
Really?
I know, it sounds counterintuitive in our digital world.
Yeah.
But think about it. For your most vital accounts, bank, email, maybe crypto, a password stored securely offline in a notebook locked away somewhere safe. Well, it's immune to online hacking attempts. It's a layer of security that sophisticated attacks just can't touch remotely.
Huh. Never thought of it that way. So offline backup for the super important stuff.
Exactly. Just keep that notebook very secure, obviously.
Okay, what else?
Enable two-factor authentication, 2FA. That adds a second step, like a code sent to your phone or a fingerprint after your password.
That extra layer of security.
Makes a big difference. Or even better, look into passkeys. It's newer technology.
Passkeys?
Yeah, they basically replace traditional passwords altogether with secure credentials linked directly to your device. Very strong protection.
Okay, worth looking into. And you mentioned auditing.
Right. Take a look at your digital footprint. What apps have access to what? Especially check your financial apps, your social media platforms. Clean up old accounts you don't use.
Good digital spring cleaning.
Pretty much.
So how do you actually find out if your specific data, your email or phone number, was caught up in one of these past breaches?
There's a really useful, trusted tool for that. It's called Have I Been Pwned.
Have I been pwned? Okay.
Yeah, the website is www.havebeenpwned.com. You just go there, type in your email address or even your mobile number, and it checks it against a huge database of known data breaches, things like the old Domino's breach, Facebook breaches, many others. It'll tell you if your details showed up.
Okay, that sounds incredibly useful. HaveIBeenFrowned.com?
Definitely check it out. But it's not just a one-time check. Continuous vigilance is key.
Meaning?
Keep an eye on your email account activity. Look for any suspicious login attempts or password reset requests that you didn't initiate. That can be an early warning sign.
Got it. Stay alert. So circling back to that accountability question you raised earlier, who is being held responsible for these massive failures?
Well, if you connect this to the bigger picture, accountability is becoming a much bigger focus. We're seeing social media giants, big tech companies increasingly facing the heat, lawsuits, public pressure.
For basically not doing enough to protect user data.
Exactly. For failing to implement what's considered proper cyber hygiene at their end. And regulatory bodies, like the FTC in the US or GDPR rules in Europe, they're pushing much harder now for stronger compliance.
Raining of fines.
Significant penalties, yeah. It goes further. Some experts we looked at actually argue that these companies shouldn't just pay fines to the government. They believe companies should be actively compensating the users whose data was breached.
Oh, interesting. Like paying individuals.
Yes. The argument being that protecting user data isn't some optional extra. It's a fundamental cost of doing business online. If they fail, they should pay for the damage caused to users.
That's a powerful idea. Changes the incentives quite a bit. So, okay, we've talked about the massive scale, the risks, the causes, the solutions. But one thing that came through clearly is this idea that, well, nothing online is ever 100% secure.
That's the hard truth, yeah.
So does that mean we should just sort of give up? Does individual action even matter if breaches of this scale can still happen?
That's a really critical question, and it's easy to feel a bit fatalistic, isn't it?
A little bit, yeah.
But no, individual action absolutely matters. While it's true nothing is impenetrable, being aware, being vigilant, taking those proactive steps we talked about, that can significantly reduce your personal risk. It makes you a much harder target.
So you raise the barrier for attackers.
Precisely. Digital threats are constantly evolving, that's clear.
Yeah.
So our security habits, they have to evolve too. The key takeaway, maybe the thought to leave listeners with, is this. Don't wait until you are breached to take action. Secure your digital life today. Start now.